You can open an image in Photoshop just like you would open a document in most other applications. You go to the File menu, you choose Open, you navigate to your file, and Photoshop will open it and show it to you. But if you've built a workflow in Lightroom, then you're not usually dealing with actual image files. Lightroom is handling all of that opening and closing for you. Adobe knows this, so they have built a round-tripping process into Lightroom, and by that I mean a way to take an image on a round trip from Lightroom into Photoshop and back into Lightroom. As an example, let's say this image that I was working on earlier, if I want to take it into Photoshop, maybe there's something I want to do here that I can't do easily in Lightroom, like I mentioned earlier, removing all of those telephone poles. I would like to do that in Photoshop. I can do that using the Open in External Editor command. So this round tripping thing is not something that's specific to Photoshop. I could actually say I want to open this in whatever, any other image editor. By default, it comes set up to open in Photoshop. What it does now is it renders out a file. Remember, I don't actually have an image yet. I've got a raw file and a list of edits, or an original file and a list of edits. It puts those two things together and creates a new TIFF file and saves that to my drive and opens that up in Photoshop. So here I am in Photoshop. I'm going to just quickly use some tools here to take out some telephone poles. I don't think I'm going to do all of them because that would take a while. And this will give you a quick little idea of a simple retouching. I'm using a tool that basically just copies data from one location and puts it in another, but it's a brush, so I can control the extent of that copying by brushing. The cross is showing where data is coming from, the circle is showing where it's going. And just try to fix these horizon lines so they match. That's working pretty well. I don't think anyone would ever know there was a telephone pole there. So I'm able to just interactively paint lies directly into my image. It's great. So I would do all of that, get this the way that I want it. And when I'm done, I would, because this is Photoshop, do what I normally do in a normal application. I need to save this document to save my changes. So I'm just going to close it, and when Photoshop asks if I want to save, I say yes, save. It saves the document. I can see that happening up there. Closes the window, and here I am just left with an empty Photoshop window. I'm going to switch back to Lightroom, and when I do, I see this now. Here is my original image, and here is my new edited Photoshop image. You can see the telephone poles disappearing, and you can see that I did a really sloppy job on that one right there, so I'll have to go back and fix that at some point. But what it's done is it has automatically added that edited image into my Lightroom library, so I don't have to go through an import process of any kind. I've had a very seamless round trip off into Photoshop and back. It was like taking a little vacation. It has stacked those two images together. I can close the stack, and now all I ever have to see in my library is my edited Photoshop document. What's cool is I can actually tell the difference by looking down here at the bottom. Here's a file name. This actually shows me what the original file is called. This is U2C0999-edit. That weird number is what the camera originally named the file. And over here is my original file with its raw extension. So Photoshop has very seamless integration into Lightroom. If you don't use Photoshop, you can choose another editor to do that round trip with, and Lightroom will take care of managing all of the importing. It's a really easy way to work. It's a really easy way to add the entire power of Photoshop to Lightroom. As I said, you can do most of what you need to do in Lightroom, but for those extra little bits like removing telephone poles, it's pretty painless to zip out to Photoshop, do the edit, and come back into Lightroom without having to do any file management at all.